Your father passes, you're grieving, and then a letter arrives from the state. Medicaid is claiming his paid-off house to cover what they spent on his care. The house you grew up in? Gone. This is not a theoretical problem. Every year, tens of thousands of estates get a claim filed against them, and most of those families had no idea it was coming until the letter arrived. My name is Mike, and tonight I'm going to show you exactly what's coming for your house and the 3 moves that actually stop it. So imagine you paid off your mortgage over 30 or 40 years, every month another payment, and then one day it stopped. The house is yours and you're 65, your wife is 63. You have Social Security and retirement savings coming and a paid-off house. You think you have done everything right, and then one day she falls, a stroke, sudden, and the doctors say she is going to need full-time care, not rehabilitation, full-time nursing home care. Medicare covers some of it for about 3 weeks fully. Then a steep daily copay kicks in, and it cuts off completely at 100 days. After that, you are paying out of pocket $9,000, $12,000, or even $15,000 depending on where you live. That is a car payment plus your utility bill plus groceries, every single month for however long it takes, 2 years, 5 years, who knows. So you think, I have a paid-off house, I will use that to pay for her care and keep her in the facility she likes, and then when the time comes, we will figure out the house. Here is where Medicaid enters the room. After maybe 6 months or a year of you paying out of pocket, you have spent $140,000 and your savings are getting thin. You call someone who says you should apply for Medicaid, that Medicaid will take over the payments and the state will cover the nursing home bill. Problem solved. Except Medicaid is not solving your problem. Medicaid is solving Medicaid's problem. They are not giving you money, they are taking a lien on your house, a legal claim, a piece of paper that says when this woman passes away, the state gets paid first. So you think your paid-off house protects your family, and while you are alive it does. The state cannot touch it as long as you are living in it. And that is a real federal protection that matters. But here is what most people miss. That protection is a delay, not a cancellation. When the surviving spouse passes too, the claim is still there waiting. The house sells, the state gets paid what it spent, and your kids get what is left. This is called the Medicaid Estate Recovery Program, MERP, or as I call it, the Asset Recovery Trap. And it is very official sounding, very official feeling, and very real. It hits tens of thousands of families every year. Now at this point, most people think they know the answer. They will set up a revocable living trust, put the house in there, and Medicaid cannot touch assets in a trust, which is exactly what Medicaid is counting on you to think. A revocable living trust, the kind you set up to avoid probate, the kind you see advertised on the radio, does one thing really well. It keeps your house out of probate, keeps it private, keeps it from going through the court system. But it does not stop Medicaid. Not at all, not even a little. Medicaid looks at your revocable trust the way you look at a glass door. They can see right through it, they see the house, they file a claim on it, and your trust does not slow them down for 1 second. The trust that was supposed to protect you does not protect you from this. Here is what makes this so maddening. Most people have heard about the 5-year look-back, that rule that says if you give away money in the 5 years before you apply for Medicaid, the state penalizes you. And everyone has heard about that. But almost nobody has heard about what happens on the back end. You spend 5 years protecting yourself from the look-back. You get Medicaid to pay for care, and then after your spouse passes, after you think the worry is over, Medicaid sends a bill for the nursing home costs. It is like they designed 2 separate traps, almost like they planned it that way. Right now you are probably running through your own situation, wondering if you are protected, if your house is at risk, if you can still do something about this. Those are good questions, and most of them have answers, but the answers depend on where you live. Here is the thing about Medicaid that nobody explains. It is run by the states. The federal government sets the broad rules, but states enforce them however they want, and some states are aggressive about Medicaid recovery. They go after houses, file liens, sell estates, while other states basically do not care because they have bigger problems. So the first question is not, how do I protect my house? It is, what is my state's MERP policy? Because the answer to whether you are in trouble lives there. Let me give you examples. Say a man in New York has a house worth $400,000. His wife needs years of care, and the state pays $350,000 in nursing home costs. It can claim up to that amount from the estate. The house sells, the state takes what it spent, and his son inherits whatever is left. That is how an aggressive state like New York works. Recovery equals what Medicaid paid. Florida, for example, has homestead protection, where you own a house and it passes to your spouse or your kids, and it passes outside probate, so the state has nothing to grab. But that protection depends on it staying a homestead and going to family, because if you rent it out or leave it to someone who is not a relative, you can lose that shield, which is why you see old guys retiring to Florida. It is not just the weather, it is also the fact that the state's probate mechanics work in your favor if you do it right. Texas has similar protections with strong homestead exemptions, and California scaled its program way back but only for assets that avoid probate, so you still need planning to keep the house out of reach. It is not automatic, but Ohio and Illinois are expanded recovery states, meaning they will reach assets that probate-only states cannot touch. So if you are in one of those states and your house is not protected, it is at risk. So here is the reality. You could be sitting in a state where Medicaid recovery is basically unenforceable and you are panicking for no reason. Or you could be in an expanded recovery state thinking you have time when you do not. The state you live in is literally the difference between losing your house and keeping it. And right now some of you are thinking, okay, but I am probably fine, my state is not one of the aggressive ones. Here is where most people get this wrong. Even in a lighter enforcement state, policy changes, budgets get tight, and states have quietly expanded recovery programs before, with zero warning to homeowners. So probably fine is not a plan. Knowing your state's actual rule is the plan. And there is a fix for this regardless of which state you are in, which is exactly where we are headed next. So if a revocable trust does not work, what does? The answer is an irrevocable trust. And I know that sounds like a legal nightmare, but it is not, because the concept is actually elegant once you see it. Here is the picture. Your house has your name on the deed. And as long as your name is on that deed, the deed says you own it. So Medicaid looks at that deed, sees your name on it, and files a claim. An irrevocable trust is you transferring that deed to a legal entity, a trust, that you set up yourself. Once your name comes off that deed and the trust's name goes on, Medicaid cannot claim it because technically you do not own it anymore. The trust owns it. This feels like cheating, but it is not. It is how the law actually works. Medicaid can only seize things that belong to you, and if you transferred it to a trust years ago, it does not belong to you anymore. Problem solved. Let me give you a concrete example. Say you are 62 years old, you are healthy, your house is paid off and worth $350,000, and you set up an irrevocable trust today and transfer the deed to it. Your name comes off, the trust's name goes on. You still live in the house, you still pay the taxes, you still maintain it. Nothing feels different from your perspective, but Medicaid cannot touch it. 12 years later, you have a stroke and need nursing home care. You apply for Medicaid. Medicaid sees your house, but your name is not on the deed. The trust owns it. Medicaid has nothing to claim. Your kids inherit $350,000 instead of whatever is left after the state takes its cut. That is how it works. And I want to be straight with you about this. Once you move your house into an irrevocable trust, you cannot take it back. You lose some control. You cannot just decide later you want to sell this house and move to Arizona because the trust owns it, and that is the whole point. You are trading control for protection. And for most people over 60, that is a trade worth making. And in some states, Florida especially, there is an even simpler tool called a ladybird deed. It lets you keep full control of your house while you are alive, passes it straight to your kids outside probate when you go, and does not trigger the 5-year look-back. It is not available everywhere, but where it is often the cleanest move on the board, and your elder law attorney will know if your state allows it. And there is a timing trap built into this too. Medicaid has a 5-year look-back on transfers, so if you put your house into an irrevocable trust and then need Medicaid care within 5 years, Medicaid is going to see that transfer and penalize you. So the window to do this is before you need it, and most people do not think about it until they are already sick, and by then it is too late. Which means if you are 72 years old and healthy, the window is closing. If you are 75 and already showing signs of memory problems, the window is basically closed. And if you are 80 and your spouse just had a stroke, the window is gone. The trap does not just wait for you to get sick, it waits for you to get too sick to protect yourself. And once you are too sick, the 5-year clock starts the moment you apply for Medicaid. You cannot go backwards. So at this point, most people think they have figured it out. They will set up an irrevocable trust, put the house in there, Medicaid cannot touch it, their kids inherit it, problem solved. And that part is true, an irrevocable trust does protect your house from Medicaid. But here's what almost nobody thinks about. When you put your house in an irrevocable trust and then your kids inherit it through that trust, they do not get something normal people get when they inherit. Normally when your kids inherit your house, the IRS does something called a step-up in basis. You bought your house for $80,000 in 1985. It is worth $400,000 today. Your kids inherit it, and the IRS says, okay, You inherited it at $400,000. That is your new starting point. They only pay capital gains tax on growth from today forward, not from 1985, just from today. But here is the catch, and it comes down to how the trust is written. If the trust is not drafted to preserve that step up in basis, your kids can inherit a house with hundreds of thousands in built-in gains and a capital gains tax bill to match. Let me be specific. Your kids inherit the house. They decide to sell it 6 months later because one wants to move to California and the other wants to live abroad. They sell it for $400,000. Normally they would pay zero capital gains tax because they inherited at $400,000 and sold at $400,000 with no gain. But with a wrong trust structure, they owe capital gains tax on $320,000. At the 15 to 20% capital gains rate, that is somewhere between $48,000 and $64,000 in taxes. That is the surprise bill. But a good elder law attorney drafts it so the step-up survives, same protection from Medicaid with no surprise tax bill. Which is the entire reason you do not download a trust template off the internet, because the drafting is the whole game. It is not set up a trust and be done. It is work with someone who knows how to draft the trust so you get Medicaid protection without creating a capital gains tax trap. That is the difference between protecting your family and creating a new problem. Okay, so here is what I actually want you to do. 3 things in this order. Move number 1 is to go to Medicaid.gov right now and search your state, look up MERP, read what your state does, find out if they go after houses, if they have exemptions, if they just do not enforce it at all. Write it down, take 5 minutes, and actually do this. Do not listen to this video and forget about it. Pull up Medicaid.gov right now. I will have the exact link on screen and in the description below, along with the MACPAC report that has the real numbers on how often this actually happens state by state. Move number 2 is to figure out your timeline. How old are you? How old is your spouse? Do you have a family history of living a long time or a shorter time? I know that sounds dark, but the 5-year window on irrevocable trusts is real. If you are 62 and your parents both lived to 90, you have a window. But if you are 74 and your parents both had strokes at 70, your window is closing. And this is not abstract math, this is your actual life. Move number 3 is to talk to an elder law attorney, not a general lawyer, not a real estate lawyer, an elder law attorney who knows your state's specific rules. They can set up an irrevocable trust if that is the right move, and can tell you if there are exemptions that apply to your situation. 1 hour, that is all it takes, and many will do an initial consultation for a few $100s, which if you are in an expanded recovery state is the best few $100s you will spend. Here is how to think about the timeline decision. If you are under 60 and you own a paid-off house, set up an irrevocable trust now because you have time, and the 5-year window is not a threat to you. If your state is aggressive, you want this done and locked in before you hit 65. If you are 60 to 68 and healthy, you are in the gray zone. Talk to that attorney because you might have time or you might not. And I mean this literally. If you are 65 today and you have a family history of healthy long life, you have about 5 years to decide. And if you are 68, you have 2 years. Do not guess on this one. Get advice. If you are 69 to 71 and there are no health signs, you are in the window, but it is narrowing fast, and an attorney can tell you if you can still pull this off. If you are 72 or older, or if your spouse is already showing signs of needing care, the window to set up an irrevocable trust is basically closed because the 5-year look-back will catch you. At that point, your strategy shifts completely, and you are probably looking at hardship exemptions if your state has them, or spousal protections, or accepting that some of the estate goes to Medicaid and planning for that instead. This is not giving up, this is being realistic about what you can and cannot protect at this point. The asset recovery trap is not some rare gotcha. It hits tens of thousands of families every year. People who did everything right, paid off their house, built retirement savings, followed the rules, and then Medicaid takes the house to pay for care that they thought their savings would cover. The kids inherit the debt instead of the asset, and that is how it works if you do not know about it. It is avoidable, but only if you know it exists and you act before you need to, because the 5-year window is not open forever. The moment you need care, it is closed. So if you are over 55 and you have a paid-off house, you have a decision to make. Not tomorrow, not when you get sick, now. If this is hitting close to home, if you are sitting there thinking about your own situation or a parent's situation, or wondering if you have already waited too long, drop your age and state in the comments. I read every one, and your state's rules matter, they really do. Some of you live in states where MERP is basically unenforceable, and you are panicking for nothing. While others live in states where it is aggressive and you have no idea, and the comment section will tell you what applies where you are. The next video is about what happens when your spouse passes away first while you are both on Medicaid, because the rules change, and how you plan for that determines whether your surviving spouse ends up broke or protected. It is probably the most important thing I cover on this channel. I'm Mike. See you there.